You're watching The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are The Breakfast Club. We have a special guest in the building this morning, Shanti Das. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. It's
How's
good
everything?
to be here. Everything is great.
Good morning.
How y'all doing?
Blessed.
So I've known Shanti from the music business for quite some time. So let's talk about your journey from working behind the scenes in music to actually starting your own organization, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a cause for you that you've been very vocal about because you have your own experiences.
Exactly. So my dad completed suicide when I was 7 months old. It was really tough on my family. I have 2 siblings. My mom was left to raise 3 kids. And, you know, we don't really talk about therapy or counseling or anything in the African-American community. So for a long time, I was, like, embarrassed about it. I wouldn't really tell anybody how my dad died. And it became, like, this cloud over my life. And even though I had a really successful career in the entertainment business, you know, when I started experiencing depression and other things, like, I was always afraid that I might want to commit suicide just because I didn't know if I was predisposed to something. So long story short, I left Universal Motown in 2009. I was at the top of my game, executive vice president, walked away from a huge check and moved back home because my mom developed Alzheimer's. And over the last 8 years, I've been an entrepreneur. And through the ups and downs of financial hardships and then kind of rehashing things with my dad, the depression just crept back in. And so I finally went to counseling in my 30s to forgive my father. That was the first time. I was living in New York City, working at Columbia Records. And then like 2009 is when I went back to therapy. So it's been a crazy journey for me. My best friend committed suicide 4 years ago. I have a family member that has bipolar 1 disorder. And sometimes this is hard to talk about, but in 2015, I contemplated suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you contemplate?
So I was at my lowest point. I was suffering from a deep depression. I didn't want to get out of bed. I really thought that my life here, my work was done. I couldn't control my thoughts. I needed help, and I didn't know that I really needed the help. And so one night, I was just driving around aimlessly. I was crying a lot, and ran into a friend. I felt like God just placed that person in my path, and they were like, yo, what's wrong with you? You need to call your sister. So I called my sister, and I called the suicide prevention hotline number. And then my pastor, believe it or not, was like, yo, I need you to go get some help. Because, you know, oftentimes in the urban communities, we're told to just pray our problems away. Mm-hmm. And I'm a Christian. I pray every day. But sometimes, you know, you got to go to the doctor. And so I went to see a psychiatrist and got the help that I needed. I started on my antidepressants. And then I was doing an interview in Atlanta, and Silence of Shame just kind of rolled off of my tongue. And I was afraid because I didn't, you know, I would like to think I have a good legacy in the music game, but I didn't want to be known as the poster child for mental health. But, like, everything kept coming my way. And I was, like, seeing a lot of people suffering, family members, people in the entertainment industry. You know, my good friend Shakir Stewart, you know, passed away from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. And I was like, I got to do something. You know, I need to really step up and use my platform in entertainment. And so came up with the idea in 2015. I like to say it was conceived in 2015 and launched last year. So we launched last year on May 5th. And I just had a bunch of people posting, and I wasn't sure who was going to support me, but, like, everybody from Ludacris to Candy Burris, Estelle was posting on May 5th. We got 90 million impressions in one day.
For Silence to Shame.
For Silence to Shame.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, like, this is good. Everybody's okay with talking about it. And so here we are a year later. The National Day calendar recognized Silence to Shame Day on May 5th and every May 5th thereafter. A shout out to the city of Baltimore. They gave us a proclamation. Baltimore is lighting the dome at City Hall in honor of Silence to Shame and Mental Health Awareness Month. And we have a ton of celebrities coming on board to support. But more importantly, we're in the community doing the work.
Right.
Like, I feel like I ain't felt like this since I first broke Outkast. Like,
wow,
hand-to-hand distribution, the
brag.
promo. Like, I'm just
a nice little humble brag.
I mean, that was a monumental, and so now
for
this
me
is
though,
something
it was
else
a pivotal
monumental.
moment in my career, and you know, I know how hard and passionate I worked for those guys, and just was happy to be in the industry, a young girl out of college, and so to be able to have my own movement and see it kind of permeate through culture and society, it means a lot, and it's so many everyday people that are supporting us. We just finished a 7-city teen mental health tour with Jack and Jill of America, and it's a lot of teens out there that are suffering, I think, whether it's social media, bullying, this idea of perfectionism, like everybody feels like they got to be perfect, everybody putting so much pressure on themselves. And people thinking that therapy is corny, and it's not corny. Like, I'm actually back in therapy.
I go every
and I know
week.
you, Friday at 3 o'clock.
Friday at
Yeah,
3.
we know.
I love it. You left me hanging. See, I was about to get depressed because you left me hanging.
Sorry, my bad. bad.
What are some signs for people that might feel like perhaps they are or don't even realize that they're suffering from depression?
Like, so for me, one of the first things I realized is, again, not wanting to get out of bed. I mean, not even wanting to open the blinds. Like, it was crazy laying in bed or being a couch potato, feeling hopeless. Like, you can't really see a light at the end of the tunnel. Withdrawing from your friends when you get invited to events and you just be like, nah, I'm good. But you look up and it's 3 weeks later and you hadn't gone to see anybody, you hadn't done anything.
I call that getting old too now.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit of that.
Yeah.
But if you do it and you're in a sad place, right? Also, when you get irritable, your eating habits change. I actually ate out of depression back in the gym now, so trying to get, my life back.
Right.
Because it is mind, body, and soul. A lot of people think mental health, you just have to go to a psychiatrist and take medication, but a lot of it is how you live, what you eat. It's been proven that when you exercise and you get those endorphins going, like it helps you feel better.
And also certain things that you eat might also affect your mood incredibly as well.
Absolutely. So, we're just out here fighting a good fight. I did a panel last year at the Lyft headquarters in Silicon Valley because a lot of people that have startups, they're, are high functioning people sometimes that are depressed and anxious because you get all that money and you got to figure out how the company is going to thrive and survive. So we've heard stories of suicide and of deep depression in Silicon Valley. Shout out to the NFL Players Association and the NFL. They're doing a mental wellness symposium in Atlanta on May 14th. They've asked me to host. Truly humble.
I want to ask about the music industry. I know a lot
doubt.
of people in the music industry are always depressed, and you see a lot of depression coming out, a lot of people with suicide, a lot of people contemplating suicide. Did that make you feel that way too, the music industry?
So the industry, I think any high-powered or high-profile industry can be tough because it's all about, the industry is aspirational, a little braggadocious. And now social media is like everybody, how many times you check your phone, right? And you're on IG looking at everybody's highlight reel. And so I can definitely say for me, even the 8 years that I walked away from the label game, seeing my peers that are like president of this, vice president of that, I'm sitting here going, damn, like, am I really doing the right thing? Like, I could still be at the top of my game. Like, shout out to Ethiopia over at Motown, who's the president. She was my intern.
Wow.
And here I'm looking like, wow, I am trying to be a servant leader and go back to humble beginnings.
That's
and
what your call
You got a
was.
bigger purpose though.
Oh,
That's
I
what your
do.
call
And I
was,
realize that. But you
Right.
asked me, and I'm being honest with you. This is like transparency for me. Like,
Right.
if I said that it didn't bother me, I would be lying. So
Word.
that kind of added to things. And I was like, okay, God, what are you really trying to tell me to do? And so I had to get comfortable with that shift. So I think it was everything on top of it. But the industry can be tough, and you got to have thick skin, especially being a woman. I know you can attest to that.
Absolutely.
Whether it's, how much you're getting paid, how you getting hit on a gazillion times, and you're like, hey, I mean, it's flattering, but you want to just get
Or
the
how
work
sometimes
done.
people try to demean what it is that you do for a living because you're a woman, or say you got
Absolutely.
this job for this reason, or belittle what it is that you're doing.
Absolutely. But we, like you mentioned, we've seen a lot of people, Shakira Stewart, Robin Sims, Fred Jackson back in the day who worked at MTV. I mean, Fred Thomas who worked at MTV.
And then you also had all these things that you hadn't really dealt with in your
Correct.
own.
So I'm glad you said that. I had not unpacked the fact that my dad completed suicide. I still was that little girl wanting to meet her father. And so I really needed like some deep therapy to start unpacking that, because I don't think I could ever go to where I wanted to be in life unless I dealt with that. And I think a lot of us got pent up frustrations or trauma from the past, because that's another thing. You talk about the mental health disorders that are out there. So you got schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, and there's bipolar 1 and 2. But let's talk about PTSD in the
Hell
hood.
yeah, I definitely got
The
that.
trauma. It
Hell
could be
yeah.
from physical abuse, sexual abuse, being, all these kids that are seeing their homeboys and homegirls get
Get
shot
killed,
right in front of them.
having guns put on
Are you kidding me?
running from police,
Like,
all kind of stuff.
You're going to experience trauma. And so one of the things we're trying to do now is shoot content. I want to create a documentary around that. Also, from an incarceration standpoint, I was talking to Derek Dudley, who's Common's manager, and Common did a prison tour last year.
Right.
And the one thing that Common was like, he was like, yo, a lot of these people don't need to be locked up. They need mental health treatment. And so it's just so much work that needs to be done. And I just want to shout out you guys, the Breakfast Club, for all that you're doing, because I know you've been talking about mental health a lot. I know you talk about going to therapy, and we need it.
I don't think people take it serious.
They
though. Like,
don't.
even
Or
when
they
people
don't
come
even
up
know
here-
what it is.
when
Like,
people
what
come
is
up here
mental
and
health?
say they were contemplating suicide, I think a lot of people take it, shut up, you're rich, or shut up, you're this. But it's a serious
It
thing,
is
and people get to
dead serious.
that place where they feel like you felt like my work here is done. I don't have any purpose here. There's no reason for me to be here.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Bow Wow say that.
And we can look at people that are really successful or have money, and people will say, oh, what does he have to worry about? And make fun of people, that people could be depressed over certain things in their life that we don't even have any idea what's going on with them personally. They might not even have any idea.
Exactly.
You know, and so I think it's really important to just know that you can't superficially look at somebody and say, well, their life is so perfect. Nobody's taking that seriously. Why are you depressed? Like, shut up, you have everything. And you can't ever look at it like that.
You cannot, but it's easy to say that and make those calls. And even like just the words like crazy, and I saw Ye say he wants to remove the stigma around the word crazy. Even mental health. Sometimes mental health just makes people think differently, and they think a sane asylum or something. But mental and physical health go hand in hand. That's why now, like, I like to use the term brain health. Because your brain is your largest organ that controls everything in your body.
I call it brain exercise.
I like that.
It's a cerebral exercise. Because, we go to the gym, we do the detoxes for our body, all that stuff. But what about this?
Absolutely.
Now, what about the decision to go on medication? Because I know that's a hard one to make sometimes for people also. And you always hear the term, oh, he's off his meds. Oh, he didn't. So explain what made you make the decision that, yes, this is something that is necessary.
So it's funny you say that. My sister, actually, she's older. She went to therapy long before I did. And she's been on antidepressants for quite some time. And she always told me, she's like, you really need to consider. But it was my ego. I was like, I don't need medication. Like, I'm good. It was me thinking that I was okay. But when I got to that lowest point and I felt like I couldn't really control if I was going to take those pills or not, I knew something was wrong. I was like, I prayed and it was like, okay, I got to figure this out. And so it took me being at that lowest point to say, okay, I'm going to try it. Because if I had cancer, I would, obviously do chemo.
But what do the pills do to you? Like, how does it make you feel when you take those pills?
So when I first started on my antidepressants, it made me feel a little nervous and anxious. And so
see, that's why I go to therapy to get rid of the anxiety.
So I called my psychiatrist back, though, because sometimes you have to have them adjust your level. So I had them, like, decrease my dosage. And it helped me. And then I found myself feeling happier.
So it makes you feel like the pills make you feel happier?
Oh, yeah, because oftentimes when you have depression, it's a chemical imbalance, right? There's certain levels in the brain that aren't matching up like they should. And so it raises those levels so it evens you out and puts you in a happier place and space.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people say you said you're trying to control your thoughts, so it helps you get out of your own head.
Yeah, and you even it out. And so I know of several people that suffer from bipolar 1 disorder. And so bipolar 1 is more like real high, extreme highs and lows, and you may have a psychotic break or a manic episode. And bipolar 2 is more just like severe depression. But like when I witness one specific person who stopped taking their meds, who are bipolar, I can immediately tell that they're off their meds. They get this heightened sense of awareness. They get, really braggadocious. Sometimes their thoughts
screaming, yelling
don't quite make sense. Not so much screaming and yelling.
Have you noticed that this weekend from anyone, maybe?
So let me just say this much. I don't know if that person that you might be referring to has ever come out and said anything in terms of an exact diagnosis, but I recognize some of those symptoms. And I say it in the most humble way, like, I hope you get the help that you need.
And that's exactly what I said. I pray that he gets the help that he needs.
That's why it's so
because I think he's brilliant. And I even think, not even talking specifically to him, but CBS Sunday Morning did a really interesting piece a couple months ago on genius and the brain, and the fluctuations. And so many people that we find that may suffer from a lot of these disorders are really talented and really smart. But it's like, again, the levels are off, and sometimes they just need help.
That's why I think it's really whack that like people like, oh, let's cancel him when the man clearly said he's on meds. Like,
he's on medication.
Like, he's talked about it. Like,
and then people say, well, he's cured already. He doesn't need any.
No,
but you can see it.
They're like, he's cured. I'm like,
yeah, but it doesn't. And see, that's a misconception. It's not like you take chemo and the cancer goes away after so many treatments. Like some people and one of my family members may be on, medication for bipolar 1 the rest of their life.
Right.
And that's just something you got to get comfortable with.
But can they test for that? Because, with babies now, they can test for anything, especially if it's a chemical imbalance. Can they test for that at a young age?
So there are certain, not all psychiatrists will do like a brain scan or MRI. And I have to learn more on the medical side. But like I'm working closely now with the Emory Brain Health Center in Atlanta. And I know they're trying to come up with innovative ways to be able to test and treat. But for the most part, it's a diagnosis in terms based on your symptoms and your behavior.
Do they know where the chemical imbalance comes from?
I don't know.
No.
I'm not sure. Sometimes it could be genetic, possibly.
'Cause I heard sometimes it might be genetic. Sometimes they say it's food.
So from a depression standpoint, though, I have seen that, certain doctors will say, okay, you're already predisposed to it, so it could be, genetically passed on to you from your mother and your father. I personally think that it's genetic from my parents. And I'm just dealing with it. But I'm still Shanti Das, and I don't say that like Shanti Das the artist, like Shanti Das the person.
Right.
Like nobody can take that away from me. I'm not gonna let y'all make me feel bad about what I'm doing to better myself. Whether it's therapy, whether it's taking medication, and then starting this movement. Like I'm for the first time in my life, y'all, I'm owning my truth. I'm okay with it. I'm in my own skin, and I hope that so many other people can heal because you've seen no one is immune to this. I don't care where you live, how much money you make, what kind of car you drive, who you are, how many records you sold, how many streams you got this week, how many people you got trolling on your page. None of that freaking matters.
Right.
At the end of the day, we all need to heal and help one another. DeMarco DeRozan, Kevin Love have come out, from an NBA standpoint.
Yep.
The Rock recently talked about depression from his mother attempting suicide. Bow Wow's obviously, whether he was, I don't know if it was real or not, but when you mention not wanting to be here or possible suicide, you got to take that serious at a certain point. Like, you can't just blow that over. It's been so many people, Mariah Carey, I'm proud of her for opening up and being honest. I mean, I could go on for days. Right. You guys know. You see J. Cole, on his record, he's talking about meditate over medication. But everybody's going through it. And what I don't want, and that's why I'm so grateful to be on this show, because I know what it means to the culture, we got to stop self-medicating and just, putting a Band-Aid over it. Because if you got some really serious issues and you're acting out and the anger's there, sometimes it stems from something else. And it could be from a brain health issue. So y'all, the guys got to, stop putting it out there in the culture that just being able to drink some lean or smoke some weed or do this is okay. Because I've seen where, synthetic weed had an adverse effect on my family member. And it could have ended tragically with another family member. So, my plea is to the business, to the culture, everybody, I need y'all to stand up for mental health. I'm out here waving this flag, trying to save lives. And so I just...
None of this is coincidence, you know that, right? I believe in the universe. I think about how I interviewed Kanye back in April. He waited to put the interview out this week.
Which is mental health awareness.
Mental health awareness month.
Then Royce the 5'9" was up here. He was talking about, going to therapy
and
his anxiety and
that.
stuff like that. Yeah, so I don't think any of this is coincidence. I just think we're not paying attention. I think we get too caught up in the entertainment and the celebrity, but there's people out here screaming for help.
It really is. And the fact that you talk about going to therapy, everybody knows you go to therapy on Fridays at 3 o'clock. I think that's great, though.
Right.
And the fact that I'm meeting you, I hope we can do something together, and keep this message going, because it's so important. And it's funny, having been gone from the industry for a few years, it's out of sight, out of mind. But I'm grateful to the people like you who respond to me, even though I'm not at a label anymore.
I've always looked up
that
to
means
you
a lot
in the music business.
I appreciate
as
that.
I was coming up, Shanti Das was always somebody that I was like, I really like her. You've always been a really positive influence on everyone, and I would have had no idea. After you emailed me about this and I did some research and I was like, definitely got to have her up here. I had no idea all of the things that you were going through, because I just would see you as a strong woman in the entertainment business, not knowing that there were all these things that you were battling with.
And so thank you. And the one thing I'll just say to that is sometimes there's strength in recognizing your weaknesses.
Hell yeah.
So that was my weakness, and I'm still getting through it. I'm growing through it, as I like to say. And I want to just do my part and try to help the culture as much as I can. So we're super excited about National Silence and Shame Day. That's kind of a big deal for us. We only been around a year. And we've been doing all this work with no funding. Jack and Jill of America Incorporated and the Jack and Jill Foundation, shout out to them. They gave us our first grant to do the college tour, and then the city of Atlanta gave us some money. But we just been out here I've been putting the little money I got in these days. I don't have the range like I used to. I'm living kind of a humble, meek life at home, but I'm okay with that because I find joy in experiences now and being able to connect. And Free, who's here with me, and Jazz, and being able to put them on, and my girl Cameron, and everybody who works. I have a strong committee of 10 people, Cameron, Tanya, Tia, Nakia, Layla. They all work for me for free, and they got other jobs. And when I tell you they got the STS on their chest, and that's how I felt when I was working at LaFace with L.A. Reid. I wore that L on my chest. But to have those ladies and Vaughn and people just out there fighting a good fight, that's all God. You said, it ain't a coincidence. Right. These are people that came to me. one of our committee members, Rhonda, her daughter committed suicide, and she was just like, I needed this movement.
Right.
When I tell you I get DMs on Instagram, emails every day, like, y'all don't know what y'all are doing for me, for my family. My cousin's going through it. My sister's going through it. My boyfriend is bipolar. We didn't have a movement for our culture that we could stand up on. Like, I mean, I don't even want to get emotional because I ain't, you know, I'm a sensitive. I'm a Pisces. So, but just it fills me up.
You're still a thug.
Yeah, you know, I'm still a B girl. Like, I'm a B girl all day. Like, I'm feeling like Dapper Dan right now. So I be like remixing my own sweatshirts. So I took the little Burberry joint and made a little Silence of Shame shirt. So I try to like rock my brand everywhere I go. Because I think the cool thing is I'm trying to treat it differently. It's almost like I'm trying to break Silence of Shame like an album.
And you know what? You almost have to. Like, we have to market these things.
Absolutely. And everything is about lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
So from a lifestyle, it's like, let me figure out what I'm going to wear on the Breakfast Club because I got to be right for you guys.
And let's keep it real. We all have our own personal experiences with somebody close to us or ourselves going through whatever it is. And so we can all relate to this.
And when I tell you it ain't a person in America that doesn't even know somebody as a family member or experience some kind of mental health concern.
Everybody has.
I don't care who you are. I don't care who you are. So
Absolutely.
From Oprah to Michelle Obama, I need y'all. We need y'all in this movement. Diddy, I don't know where the camera's at. Me and Puff go like back. I mean, we all used to hang out. We grew up in this game together. I did shows with, you know, Outkast and Puff and Big and Craig Mack. And so I need the Stouts of the world. Like, I need y'all to stand up for me, you know. Kendrick Lamar in 2015 talked about his depression, you know, so I need everybody to like know that there's someone out there fighting for us. Shout out to DMC from Run DMC. He posted something yesterday that did bring me to tears, and he said Shanti's out here fighting for all of us. And I mean, like, I was a kid looking up to this guy, and for him to like, I'm sorry, it's like, it's real. And I'm still going through it, and I'm still healing. Like, I just finished writing my book. It's a short story book called Silencing My Shame. Because I'm like, if I'm going to be out here, you know, fighting the good fight, I got to do what I need to do to continue healing myself. And so I'm no hypocrite, right? So if I'm going to tell you to do something, then I got to do it myself, right? And be a woman of my word. Right. So I'm still healing. I'm still going through it. You know, I love, not really into meditation, but meditation works for a lot of people. I like yoga. So we're going to start doing like these trap yoga things. You know, we want to do like a wellness retreat. It's just so many different things that we can do from a lifestyle and cultural perspective. We have kids now that want to do spoken word through like talking about their feelings. And I think that's how we can get to the younger generation, right? Because everybody wants to work in entertainment. So let's make it cool for these kids to talk about their feelings and know. And especially for men, that's the hard part because y'all are taught to be strong.
Right.
Yes.
And I don't care what it is. I might not need a doctor. You know how many older men in my family just, even if they get sick any kind of way physically, they don't want to go to the doctor.
Right.
So heaven forbid it's something with your mind.
Oh, you talking to two men here that when we get sick, we run to the doctor.
So I applaud y'all for that. But so many men
My leg
don't.
hurt, I'm going to the doctor.
So many people don't.
Even growing up, especially when you grow up in hip-hop culture, like, the whole premise was to be hard.
Of course.
You know what I'm saying? You can't be pussy.
At
So imagine
all.
if you got anxiety and low self-esteem issues and you just want to be pussy. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You just want to be. But you can't, you're not allowed to be.
You can't do it. And so I've talked to a lot of people who's had their sons in therapy, and the fathers took the longest to come around to think, like, something's not wrong with my son. It's my son. You know what I'm saying?
You just need a beating.
Yeah. And so I
a lot of people are scared because, you know, I remember with my youngest son, he was acting out, and, you know, we was having a lot of problems with him. And we were scared to take him to a doctor because they always said that would stay on his record forever. And that was always a fear of ours, you know, that say, you know, maybe I'm jumping the gun. And luckily, everything was all right, and he grew out of it. But that was a fear of mine. Like, I don't want to take him to the doctor and that sticks on his record.
Understood.
You know, so that when he grows older, maybe that will limit him from...
But isn't that sealed when you go to the doctor?
It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be.
It depends. Like, you know, let's say there was something or there was nothing, and he wanted to get in the military, or he wanted to get a government job. It'll come up somehow. So we were always nervous about that.
Well, he'd be able to buy a gun still.
Yeah.
But it all reverts back to stigma.
Right.
That's why we're doing what we're doing and try to normalize the conversation
Absolutely.
so we can take that stigma away. And stigma relates to everything, whether you're in the LGBTQ community, you've been a victim of sexual abuse or violence as a child, whatever. It's all stigma. And we really got to, like, stomp stigma out.
Absolutely.
Like, fuck stigma. It's just, you know. You just got to do you. You got to do what's right for you to get healthy. Nobody else matters at the end of the day. You ain't paying my bills. So let me do what I need to do to get right.
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you about your father. How did you get to the point where you forgave him?
Ooh, that was tough. More than anything, I always wanted to meet my dad. Like, I remember being in kindergarten. You know how you're in the circle in kindergarten.
How old were you when he?
I was 7 months old. So when I got into the kindergarten, first grade, I was in a circle and they were asking us what we were doing for the weekend. And I was like, my dad's coming to visit me. And I said it for like 2 different times. And so my teacher was like, okay, hold up, let me call her mom. They had to sit me down and be like, yo, your dad's not coming back. And then once I finally talked to my mom, I'm like, what do you mean? And then I got so mad with him. That's why, like, for years, I wouldn't even let my mom bring my dad's name up. And my dad is actually of Indian descent. And my mom's African-American, so of course I'm Black. I grew up in Black culture, but there is that Indian side of my culture. And so I didn't even really want to learn about Indian culture or know anything about my dad. And it was when I was in New York City, I was working at Arista Records at the time, and I had followed L.A. Reid from LaFace when he replaced Clive Davis. And I had been there for like a year and a half. And it was just and I wasn't directly reporting to LA anymore. And so my direct report, my boss, really sent me in a bad place. And that's when I first started experiencing depression. And I had uttered the words, maybe I should just kill myself. I done sold my house. I'm up here in New York. I'm stressed out. Like, I don't like going to work every day. It's too much. I can't handle it. Maybe since my dad did it. And so that's when I first went to counseling after that. And I had a good counselor. And it actually was in New York City. When I started going to counseling. And so she just worked and unpacked all those layers with me. And she was like, you can't move on with your life until you forgive your father. Because I felt like that's what it always led back to. That was the initial problem. And so I was 33 years old. It took that much, or 32, 33 years old. But it was really, really difficult for me. And I knew something wasn't quite right when I was up here. And so once I did that, I got better. I didn't get on medication then. I didn't start medication until when I moved back to Atlanta. But that was the first time that I forgave my father, because I was just so mad. And I just couldn't understand the concept of how can you be so selfish to take your own life
and people
and
really
to leave
look at
your
it like
children
that.
here.
Mm-hmm.
And people say it's a selfish act all the time. But now that I know what I know, it's just not in your right state of mind. Like my best friend, I was headed to on vacation going to Switzerland. And this was in 2014. Right before I got on the plane, she called me. She said it was the worst day of her life. And I said, I'll wait and be the last person to board the plane. And I was going through everything, talking to her. I was trying to convince her to find some new doctors. I pulled out my laptop. I was like, well, let me email my doctor, and I'll call you back when I land in Switzerland. So I get to Switzerland. 3 hours in, I get a phone call that she had shot herself in the head. Yeah. And now that I look back on it, she was saying how much she loved me in the call. And I was like, damn, she was saying goodbye to me.
That's what I'm saying.
So that also led to another, bout of depression, because I blamed myself. I was like, what did I miss? What did I miss? And the fact that she died the same way my dad did, it did a number on me. Y'all, it's real out here.
Is that a sign? Because I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day. I'm like, it seems like when people are about to do something to themselves, they're always like, I love you, I love everybody. They just start showing everybody love.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Here's the tissues if you need.
She and I have been friends for since the 6th grade. And sometimes I still blame myself, but, she needed help. She was on antidepressants, but I don't think they had her on the right medication. That's another thing, too. Like, you see these commercials. I hate those medical commercials because they pretty much tell you, take this, but then you also can die.
Yeah.
Right.
But, you need the medication. But she was on this one particular medication. I won't say the name, but I don't think it was the right one, and I don't think she was seeing the right psychiatrist. That's like anything. Sometimes, the psychiatrist, the therapist, it's like dating. It's like being on Tinder. You got to swipe a couple times till you find the right one. So you might have to go to a couple different psychiatrists or therapists until they can properly diagnose you. Because even one of my family members, I felt like it took several times to really figure out the right diagnosis. Because again, you asked this earlier, there is no one specific test that can tell you what you have. It's all based on your behavior patterns and your symptoms. And so...
And sometimes it's trial and error. You start taking a medication, it doesn't agree with you.
Exactly.
Then they have to try something else. They have to lower your dosage. It's just different.
Yeah.
Testing it out.
But it's easy feeling that guilt, and that shame. My other friend, the young lady I mentioned whose daughter committed suicide, she didn't really see any signs, and she racked her brain for years trying to, what did I miss? And even with teenagers, you know how sometimes parents will be like, oh, they just, being a teenager. And that's true. Your hormones change and start racing when you enter into your teens. So it's like difficult to figure out, how do parents tell if my child is just being, acting out and being a brat, or if there's some real issues there. So again, I think parents got to be parents. You got to keep the damn door open. You're in my house, I'm paying the rent. You might be mad, but watch your kids.
Conversations. You got to have
and
conversations.
Talk to them. That's what I was going to say. Talk to your kids. I'm not saying be all up on their neck every 5 minutes, but you got to know what's going. You got to know what's going on in their lives.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And you have to
Every
watch the patterns. Again, if those patterns change, they don't want to play sports anymore. They don't want to talk to their friends. They're angry all the time. They're irritable. It could be something going on. And you just can't be afraid to get it checked out.
Absolutely.
Like anything else.
All right. Well, Silence the Shame. The day is May 5th.
That's
yes,
right.
it is. And so we're doing a virtual textathon. Remember, like back in the day, Jerry Lewis did the telethon?
Yes.
So I'm trying to make the Silence the Shame textathon that, for years and years to come. So we got a lot of celebrities in Atlanta that are stopping by, and we're actually physically doing it at the gathering spot. But for everyone outside of Atlanta,
I love that place.
And me too. Shout out to Ryan and TK. You can text the word silence to 707-070, 707-070. All donations are tax deductible. They will benefit all of our programs and resources for mental health for the next year. And we just want to keep doing our thing. We have a podcast also that's up on iTunes and SoundCloud. And we interview a lot of people. We just interviewed Steve Harvey's daughter because she talked about unpacking the childhood trauma from when her dad got a divorce, and Tashina Arnold. And so many people are joining the movement. So would y'all join me on May 5th? I don't care where you are. Post from where you are. You can shoot your own video. But let's stand up for mental health and save some lives.
There'll be a lot of drunk people on that day. That's Cinco de Mayo.
It's May 5th. So before you get your shot of tequila,
yes.
I need you to text the word silence to 707-070. Also, y'all can follow us on Instagram at Silence the Shame. We post a lot of stuff. Our Facebook is at Silence TH Shame. We have a college ambassador program. So for college students, we attend colleges around the country. Oh, and I forgot to mention this. So on Sunday, May 6th, is Silence the Shame Sunday. I'm a member of Ebenezer Baptist Church, which is Dr. Martin Luther King's former church, and they allowed me to share my story and testimony in the pulpit last year. So now we got Silence the Shame Sunday. We got like over 12 churches, and then World Changers just came on board, and they're going to show Silence the Shame Sunday information at over 30 churches across the country. We out here working.
All right,
Well,
Shanti Das.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate all of y'all, and congrats on everything. And congrats on your book.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's The Breakfast Club. Good morning.